So I decided I would comment on the GOP debate because it's funny as hell when they fucking argue about it. Oh shit, I guess this is live stream. I probably shouldn't shoot it. Ah, fuck it, I don't care. So yeah, I'm just gonna comment on that, and it's gonna be hilarious. Just kind of my thoughts and comments on each candidate.
You need mentoring in those schools, and you need to have a situation where people can have an alternative form to get a degree, and you need school choice, both vouchers and charter schools. All of those things can come together to help Megan. But here's the bottom line. And I'll go quickly. We as adults have to fight in our neighborhoods, in our communities, for our children's education. Put the politics aside, and everyone in this room can play a role in lifting their schools and lifting the students who are in those schools, because too much politics gets in the middle of it, and where we focus as adults and put children first, we see tremendous results. And the people of this town are going to rise, and they need to be involved. Thank you.
I'm telling y'all, I don't know where this guy is coming from, but he is doing things. You better watch this guy. He's like coming out of left field.
300,000 manufacturing jobs in this city. At last count, there are now fewer than 30,000 manufacturing jobs here, and the unemployment rate in this city is 11%, twice the national average. Senator Cruz, I know that you have general plans for tax reform, but what specifically would you do to bring manufacturing jobs back to America and train residents of cities like Detroit to do those jobs?
Well, Chris, thank you for that question. Let me start by observing that Detroit is a great city with a magnificent legacy that has been utterly decimated by 60 years of failed left-wing policy.
The boy just knows what he's talking about.
Revolutionized automobile
Sometimes.
manufacturing and brought automobiles to the middle class. During World War II, Detroit funded the arsenals of democracy to help us win World War II.
Yep.
In the 1960s, Detroit was the Silicon Valley of America. It had a population of 2 million people, had the highest per capita income in the country. And then for 50 years, left-wing Democrats have pursued destructive tax policies, weak crime policies, and have driven the citizens out.
The Bernies and the Hillarys. We are dooming ourselves.
After the other, crime has been rampant, and it is an outrage. And let me say to folks in the media, that is a story that the media ought to be telling over and over again, the destruction of left-wing policies and the millions who have hurt because of it.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, I'll give
Mic
you 30
drop.
seconds to try to answer my question. What specifically would you do to bring manufacturing jobs back to Detroit and to train the residents here to do those jobs?
And
The
challenge.
way you bring manufacturing back to America is, number one, you lift the regulations. As president, I will repeal Obamacare, the biggest job killer in America. I will pull back the federal regulators, the EPA, and all the regulators that are killing small businesses and manufacturing. And my tax plan, which is a very, very detailed plan on the website, tedcruz.org, is what's called border adjustable. We get rid of all the taxes. We get rid of the corporate income tax and the death tax and the Obamacare taxes and the payroll tax. And we replace it with a 16% business flat tax that is border adjustable, which means all exports are entirely tax-free and all imports pay the 16% business flat tax. That's a 32% differential. What that will do, Chris, is bring millions of manufacturing jobs back to this country, bring the steel industry back to this country, create an environment where when we compete on a fair and level playing field, American ingenuity can beat anyone, but right now the federal government isn't giving us a level playing field.
Thank you, Senator.
Gentlemen, the next series of questions
He's got a point.
on social issues. Governor Kasich, the last debate, you were asked a question about religious liberty and a hypothetical situation where a same-sex couple approaches a cupcake maker to do their wedding. Here's what you said. If business of selling things, if you're not going to sell to somebody you don't agree with, today I'm not going to sell to somebody who's gay, and tomorrow maybe I won't sell to somebody who's divorced. Governor, some faith leaders got nervous about that answer. Do gay marriage dissenters have rights? first of all, I try to be a man of faith every day as best as I can. And I try to focus in my faith on the do's, and I think the don'ts will take care of themselves once I get the do's right, which is humility and loving my enemy and caring for my neighbor. But secondly, look, you're in the commerce business, you want to sell somebody a cupcake, great, okay? But now if they ask you to participate in something you really don't like, that's a whole nother issue, okay? Another issue. Here's what I like to see happen. The Supreme Court ruled. I don't agree with the ruling. I'm in favor of marriage between, traditional marriage, a man and a woman. What I hope was going to happen after the Supreme Court ruling is things would settle down. If you go to a photographer to take pictures at your wedding and he says, I'd rather not do it, find another photographer. Don't sue them in court. You know what? The problem is,
Thank you.
in our country, we need to learn to respect each other and be a little bit more tolerant for one another. And at the end of the day, don't go to court. Can't we have common sense in America? That's the way it used to be. And there was a book written called The Death of Common Sense. We need to bring it back. But at the end of the day, if somebody's being pressured to participate in something that is against their deeply held religious beliefs, then we're going to have to think about dealing with it with a law.
Exactly. They're two different things.
Figure this out without having to put another law in the books and have more arguments in this country. Why don't we come together as a country?
There's no reason to freaking fight, bro.
This country. I think that's what people want. So,
Like, I'm telling you people, like, are y'all watching this? This dude finally gets a chance to speak and it's like, what?
States, a decision you have criticized.
What are those?
Status of the law. Do you believe a gay couple should be able to adopt?
Well, listen, adoption is decided at the state level, and I am a believer in the 10th Amendment in the Constitution. I would leave the question of marriage to the states. I would leave the question of adoption to the states. That's the way it's been for 2 centuries of our nation's history until 5 unelected judges in an illegitimate and wrong decision decided to seize the authority over marriage and wrongfully tear down the marriage laws in all 50 states. Now, integrally connected to this is the question of religious liberty, and at the last debate, one of my colleagues on this stage said on the question of religious liberty and Supreme Court nominees that he'd be willing to compromise and negotiate. I can tell you, for me, there are areas that we should compromise on. Marginal tax rates, we can reach a middle ground on. But when it comes to core principles and convictions, when it comes to the Constitution and Bill of Rights, I can tell the men and women at home, I will never compromise away your religious liberty. And for me, Brett, religious liberty has been
probably
a
wouldn't.
passion. I've spent 2 decades defending religious liberty, including defending the 10 Commandments before the U.S. Supreme Court and winning, defending the Pledge of Allegiance before the Supreme Court and winning, and defending the...
If that's true, then there you go.
A lone white Latin cross that was erected to honor the men and women who gave their lives in World War I. I represented 3 million veterans for free defending that memorial, and we won 5-4 before the
Senator, thank you. Senator Cruz definitely avoided saying your name, Mr. Trump, but I think he was referring to you and your religious liberty answer. Would you like to respond?
I have nothing to say. I mean, I generally speaking agree with what he said. I would have certainly have rather left it to the states. I was always at fair. I was very surprised when they came up with that decision. I would have preferred had it been left to the states, and I think most people would have preferred that.
Senator Rubio, the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, a conservative icon obviously, pointed out in United States versus Heller that like most rights, the Second Amendment right is not unlimited. Just like the First Amendment doesn't allow you to go into a theater and yell fire, he said the Second Amendment leaves room to regulate guns. So do you agree with Justice Scalia? And if so, what limits would you draw around the Second Amendment?
As few as possible. The Second Amendment, as I've said before, is not a suggestion. It is the constitutional right of every American to protect themselves and their families. It is a right that it is the Second Amendment for a reason. It is right after the defense of the freedom of speech for a reason. For clearly the founders of our nation understood, and the framers of the Constitution understood, that you cannot have life and you cannot have liberty and you cannot pursue happiness if you are not safe. And the Second Amendment, when people talk about gun laws, what they need to realize is criminals don't follow gun laws. They're criminals. By definition, they ignore the law. But the gun rights...
Liberals.
If you are talking about liberals. And a gun owner like myself, If you pass a law, I will follow whatever the law is. A criminal will not do it. They will continue to pursue these guns on the black market, where they then go out and commit crimes and they steal guns from each other. Gun laws are not effective. They simply do not provide for safety, but they do, however, ensure that law-abiding people don't have access to weapons to protect themselves.
And we get screwed on the back
Criminals
end.
will always be well-armed. They don't care about the law. They don't follow the law. We will protect the Second Amendment when I'm president of the United States.
But he ain't gonna be president.
Of an assault weapons ban. So
Not Lil
do
Marco.
you think there should be any restrictions on the Second Amendment?
I'm a big defender of the Second Amendment, and if you look at what's happened, whether it's in California where you had the 14 people killed, whether it's in Paris, which by the way has the toughest gun laws in the world, and 130 people killed, many people in the hospital, gravely injured. They will be dying, many people will be dying in addition. If we had guns, or if they had guns on the other side of the room, with the bullets going in the opposite direction, you would not have had 130 people killed. That I can tell you right now. So I'm a very big supporter of the Second Amendment.
But in 2000, you wrote in your book, I generally oppose gun control, but I support the ban on assault weapons.
I don't support it anymore. I do not support the ban on assault.
Senator Cruz, any limits to the Second Amendment?
Well, listen. Unlike Donald, I would not support banning firearms. In that instance, Bill Clinton banned many of the most popular firearms in America. And by the way, the studies show that ban did nothing to reduce violent crime. It just took away the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens.
Boom, Clinton. Anything with a Clinton in its last name, just don't trust it. Sorry, all of you people that have Clinton last names that are not, like, related to those Clintons, but whatever.
He wants to compromise and reach a middle ground with Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer. That's what he said in the last debate. And any justice that Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer sign off on.
I did not say.
And I would point out Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer are both Democrats that Mr. Trump has written checks to repeatedly. Any justice that those two sign off on is going to be a left-wing judicial activist who will undermine religious liberty, and we are one vote away from the Hillary decision being overturned, which would effectively erase the Second Amendment from the Bill of Rights. If you care about the Second Amendment, then you need to ask, who on this stage do you know will appoint principled constitutionalists to the court and not cut a deal with your Second Amendment right?
Shots fired.
The all-talk, no-action politician, and he was the primary supporter of John Roberts, who gave us Obamacare. No, it's not. You take a look. He was the primary supporter. He pushed John Roberts and pushed him, and Bush ultimately appointed him. He got appointed, and when it came his time to raise his hand and kill Obamacare, not once but twice, he let us down, and he did the wrong thing. This is the man that was the primary supporter.
He looks worried, bro.
You can read whatever you want to read.
He looks so worried.
I'm a supporter of John Roberts and him, and it was a very...
Oh my gosh.
Quickly, Senator Cruz.
Donald has a tenuous relationship with the truth. I wrote one op-ed supporting President Bush's nomination after he made it. I would not have made that nomination. But let me point out,
not what you said in the op-ed. That is not what you said in the op-ed.
God, just let him talk.
But it's not what you said in the op-ed.
Breathe.
Lion Ted.
Good old Ted giving it to him.
I know it's hard, but just...
When they're done with the yoga, can I answer a question?
Oh God, Rubio, shut up.
I really hope that we don't see yoga on this stage.
Can we let John talk, please? Let John talk. Let the adult speak.
You cannot, in fact, care about conservative Supreme Court justices and support Jimmy Carter for president. You cannot care about conservative Supreme Court justices and support John Kerry for president, as Donald did. You cannot care about conservative Supreme Court justices and support Harry Reid for Senate Majority Leader. And you cannot care about conservative Supreme Court justices and write 4 checks to Hillary Clinton for her to be president if you care at all about the Second Amendment or religious liberty or anything else.
And he laid down the hammer.
Small policy questions coming up.
And coming up, the candidates tackle foreign policy. But first, during the commercial break, join us for a Facebook Live on the Fox News.
Oh snap, Facebook Live.
About tonight's debate in the comment section. Stay with us. More to come.
Oh man, if I don't get on this, I'm gonna be so pissed. Woo woo! Halftime. Time to get some grub. Ooh.